States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I'd like to welcome all of our friends and neighbors and colleagues in joining us in this regularly scheduled June 3rd, 2024 City Council meeting. As you come in, which would be to my right, to everyone else's left, there's a set of double doors. As you walk through that doors, there's a desk. On that desk is a sign-in sheet. If you're a guest with us tonight, please sign in. City Clerk, can I have a roll call?
Yes, Councilperson Morrissey.
Here.
Palladino. Pratt. Sharp.
Here.
Soha.
Present.
Stuchel.
Here.
Veer.
Here.
Wolfram.
Here.
And Stockford.
Here.
7 present, Mayor.
Thank you, Katie. We'll move into the approval of the agenda. City Manager or any members of council have any changes they'd like to see made to the agenda tonight? Seeing none, I'd entertain a motion to approve the agenda.
So moved.
Motion on the floor from Councilman Morrissey, seconded by Councilman Veer to approve the agenda. All in favor? Any opposed? The ayes have it. We've got an agenda. We'll move into public comment on agenda items only. During this time, the podium will be open. Please limit your comments to 3 minutes. Please limit your trips to 1 to the podium. Remember, folks, this is public comment on agenda items only. So at this particular public comment period, if you'd like to speak, make sure it has a direct tie to something that's present on the agenda. I'd also like to say that because of our council rules, there is no correspondence between the podium and the council. So if you're talking, asking questions, and we're all sitting up here looking like a glass-eyed deer, we are listening to you. We're not trying to be rude. It's just per our council rules, we don't do a back and forth with people at the podium. Podium is now open.
Hi, I'm Joe Vondren, or Joe Mason, some call me. I was kind of confused. You guys didn't do grace or didn't say bless the meeting or nothing. I don't know if that's something different than other meetings. But anyways, I want to talk about the Mitchell Center. I'm not a taxpayer in Hillsdale City. I'm not here to say how you should spend your money or nothing like that. But I did grow up in Hillsdale County, in a small town, and 48 years ago was the first time I stepped in the Mitchell Center. Back then, that's what we had for entertainment. My mom took us kids to the Mitchell Center, the Mitchell Library back then. It was so big for a little boy. It was huge. Then I went in the military, grew up and went to the military. And my mom, when I was in Iraq for the second tour, I was talking to my mom on the phone. She goes, yeah, they're building a new library in Hillsdale, where Frank Beck's used to be. And they're going to combine the Mitchell Center, or Mitchell Library. I said, that's cool. I moved back here about 6 years ago, and I saw that didn't happen. And then I saw some stuff going on at the library, and I jumped on the bandwagon, and I was up in arms about some comments people made. Well, Josh, I want to tell you, you're doing an outstanding job on the library board.
Holy shit.
You really are. I was one of the ones that gave you a lot of heat about it. But you and your fellow board members are really knocking it out of the park. We haven't heard nothing bad about the library for a long time. The Mitchell Library. I know that times have changed over the last 100 years, or however long the city's had it. And maybe the city don't need it no more. But there has to be a way. And I'm sure when Mr. Mitchell donated it to the city, I'm sure he did not expect it to be a burden. He wanted it to be something good for the city. But if it's becoming a burden, a financial burden or a maintenance burden, then obviously the city's got to think about their options. But I wouldn't kick the can down the road. 2002, 2003, it's been kicked down the road, and now we got you guys. This council member, this mayor. 5 years from now, if you guys kick it down for another 5-year lease, it's going to be probably different council members, another mayor, and it's going to be kicked down the road. There has to be another solution. Sell it to a nonprofit that can maintain the building, that just don't get off that donations. It may have to be a large nonprofit. And I know a lot of people may not want to hear this. It may have to be a large nonprofit right here in our neighborhood, the Hillsdale College. Sell it to them. They love their history. You go in any of their buildings right now, and you see how they love history, and they could maintain that building. Or connect the buildings. Use the money was donated by a farmer, connect the buildings, make it part of the library. Under Josh and the other board members, they could have it be part of the library, have the ladies still have some type of agreement, or the nonprofit still have some type of agreement where they still volunteer and still do their thing there, but under the control of the library board. My wife told me, Joe, don't get out of hand, and get straight to the point. That's my point. Please don't kick it down the road. Find a solution to it. And I'm not here to tell you how to spend your money. I don't pay taxes in this city, but I was a young boy in this town, in this county. And I'm sure Mr. Mitchell would want something done with that building, and not just a parking lot or anything like that. He would want something done in his name. That's all I gotta say. And my buttons, I don't know if I'm getting fat or if my buttons just malfunction. They keep popping.
Thank you, Joe. Any more public comment regarding agenda items?
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, council members. My name is George Allen and I live in Ward 4 with my wife and 3 children. I wish to voice my concerns regarding the proposed solar project contract. I would urge you in the strongest possible terms not to enter into any such agreement until and unless it can be demonstrated that such an arrangement will not increase the utility bills of the residents of the city of Hillsdale. If, as I suspect, the outcome will be that our energy bills will increase and that you would be taking the step not for the benefit of the community, but in obedience to green energy mandates from the state government, then it is your duty as our representatives to refuse to cooperate in such a scheme. Clear, demonstrable benefits to the citizens of Hillsdale would be a good reason for voting for this contract. Mere compliance with orders from Lansing would be a very bad reason. Thank you.
Thank you, George. Any more public comment regarding agenda items?
Hello, I am Brenda Rigdon. I'm the Executive Director of the Michigan Historic Preservation Network, and I'm here to discuss or to listen to all of you about the Mitchell Research Center. I met with some people from the organization a couple weeks ago. We're looking at various ways the Michigan Historic Preservation Network can help them. We are a 43-year-old statewide nonprofit dedicated to protecting our cultural resources, and we have various incentive programs to assist owners with, maintaining and supporting their buildings. I also have a large network of people who are involved in museums and libraries and other things like that, nonprofit organizations that I've reached out to for assistance. So I would just like to urge you, please, don't tear down this gorgeous building. There are better ways, and I think we are going to be able to try to help you and help the Mitchell Center find a way to make this building useful. It already is useful, but keep it useful.
What was the organization?
The Michigan Historic Preservation Network, MHPN.org. Thanks.
Thank you, Brenda. That's encouraging. Folks, it's never been on the table to tear the Mitchell building down, so that's not something that anybody has to worry about. We've never discussed that or anything close to it. Podium is still open.
I'm Sarah Yax, Ward 4. I have concerns about the solar panel project. I think I got a little bit confused and was thinking windmills, which have not necessarily proven to be good for everybody. But my concern would be, is there more information? Where is the energy going? Is it actually coming back into our own BPU, or is it being bussed out somewhere else in battery cells? Is this actually going to lower our utility bills? Is this going to help our community, or is this going out? And I don't know if there was a packet somewhere for us to see and know more about what was going on, but I didn't hear about it until the last minute. And from what I've heard about a lot of these green energy mandates in other communities, it has not gone well. It has been, it's raised people's prices. It has not brought more energy in. The energy is being taken out to other communities. And so I would like to urge you that if you don't have answers to some of our questions, then postpone a decision a little longer until more education can be brought to the community so that we know that that's a better thing for us. And I would urge my councilman specifically to please, wait on this at the very least, if not, vote no to it directly. So, thank you.
Thank you, Sarah. Any more public comment regarding agenda items?
Liz Webb, Osseo, Michigan. When I was last here, I mentioned that we probably needed to do a historic designation for the Mitchell House. Well, I'm glad to tell you that that has already been done. I don't know if you knew that or not. The Hillsdale Downtown Historic District is a commercial historic district located in Hillsdale, Michigan, and roughly bounded by Will Carlton Road to the north, Ferris Street on the east, Walden Street on the south, and West Street on the west. It was listed on the National Register of Historic Places in 1995. That includes the Mitchell House. Just a point of note there. So we have checked a box, okay? Then I found another interesting item, some 20 pages long. The city of Hillsdale, with its designated, insignia? There it is, right there. It's on the top of this. Historic walking tour of Hillsdale. The first place mentioned on the historic walking tour of Hillsdale is the Mitchell Research Center. Now that goes on for pages here. Mrs. Stocks Park, Hillsdale Community Foundation, Masonic Temple Building, all of these historic places. The first one on the list is the historic Mitchell Research Center. Just a couple of points of history for us. And then I have a question. I understand your proposal is going to be that you want $500 a month rental to be paid by the people who are using the building. My question is, what are you going to do with the $6,000 a year that you are profiting from renting this place to the people who are using it? I would like you to think about that. Mr. Mitchell didn't ask for $6,000 a year. I want to know what you're going to do with it, folks.
Thank you, Liz. Any more public comment?
My name is Jean Heisey. I live in the 4th Ward. The young lady who addressed the issue of the solar project contract recommended that we have more information on this project to debate it. What little I know, I don't want us to be bullied into a position that we can really make a very good and wise decision on this, and I'm not sure the public has had enough information. Thank you.
Thank you, Jean.
My name is Ken Todd, resident of Litchfield Township, historian for Allen Area Historical Society. I'd like to speak on behalf of the Mitchell. Around the county, as a member of the Historical Society, a lot of our organizations are struggling to stay afloat. The Mitchell provides a wealth of information that many of our township, the Benjes included, have helped and labored for decades. We look as a smaller organization and what is our end, because in all honesty, Allen is not large enough that, and our population is declining, so we do have the unfortunate look of where will our future depository of our resources go. It has been our hope that it would go towards the Mitchell as far as all of our paper documents. And I just hope that the city will do what it is able to sit there and preserve and help the Mitchell in whatever step that is of its next chapter. A lot of these smaller towns in the area are not going to be able to support their resources. And that does look, we do have to turn to the large city in the county to sit there and help preserve that history and preserve that note. I just hope that whatever the city is able to do of its power, and I understand I'm not a taxpayer here, I'm being careful not to say spend your money this way, but if it is in the city's power and interest that it does provide a resource that the whole county can do, and that in many cases of the county, we're struggling and we're unable to provide that resource, and we hope that the Mitchell continues to be that source for the county, and that hopefully the city can provide the assistances and resources it's able to preserve that. Thank you.
Thank you, Ken.
My name is Louise Worms. I live on Fayette Street in Hillsdale. I am here again to urge you, as I have before, to take that money that you were left from that estate, to think about building a hallway with 2 doorways so you can connect the Mitchell with the community library as it was meant to be. And I'd also like to make a recommendation that you get a new microphone that works better, and perhaps move this podium, because nobody behind me can hear me. I mean, it doesn't make any sense. Let's join the 21st century.
Thank you, Louise. Any more public comment regarding agenda items?
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, council members. I'm Father Stephen Allen from Ward 4. I'm coming to make a brief comment on the solar project contract. The so-called renewable energy agenda has nothing to do with saving the environment. Its effects so far throughout the world, in fact, have been to accomplish the opposite. Its real purpose is to transfer yet more wealth and power from ordinary people to the corporate and government elite, and to bring the population down to a third world existence, making them powerless and easily enslaved. If 100 little towns in Michigan would refuse to sign these contracts, we could keep the malefactors in Lansing busy in court long enough to give us a chance to elect a new set of lawmakers who will repeal this iniquitous legislation. I urge you strongly to vote no on the contract. Thanks.
Thank you, Father Stephen. Any more public comment regarding agenda items?
Scott Sessions, 102 Cold Springs Circle. I have recently learned that Harriet Skinner Wing Mitchell is actually a cousin of mine. She's a blood relative. Her and I have the same grandfather, great-grandfather, who is Stephen Hopkins, that was on the Mayflower Compact. And I think that the money that was given to the Mitchell Library, some of it, or to the Hillsdale Library, should be given to the Mitchell Library to keep it going. It sounds like a good idea right there, that share the money and keep the Mitchell Library going. That's what I'd like. Thanks.
Thank you, Scott. Any more public comment? Okay, seeing none, we will close the podium and move into the consent agenda. On the consent agenda, we've got approval of bills, city and BPU claims of May 16th, payroll of May 23rd, city council minutes of May 20th, and ratification of signatures for Mrs. Stock's park use agreement. Is there any conversation or discussion regarding the consent agenda? Seeing none, I'd entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda. Motion on the floor from Councilman Morrissey, seconded by Councilman Soha. Can I have a roll call, please, City Clerk?
Yes. Councilperson Palladino. Yes. Sharp. Soha. Stuchel. Veer. Wolfram. Mayor Stockford.
Yes.
Councilperson Morrissey. 8-0 approved.
Thank you, Katie. Okay, we'll move into communications petitions, and let me get caught up in my packet here, folks. The first item is from the Community Development Committee meeting, and it was a letter from Mr. Richard Smith regarding the Mitchell Research Center. Richard, do you have anything to add to the letter? Do you want to read it? Do you want me to read it? Happy to do any of those things.
This letter was sent out on May 13th, and these are my personal notes regarding the community library, the Mitchell Library, that I believe should have some consideration in the future of the Mitchell building. Attached are 3 pages of the original case for support of the Mitchell Public Library. I bring it to your attention on page 2, the plan. Based on this plan, a plan was put together to establish a funding program, and the many benefactors donated in various amounts to start this plan and complete it. Due to a loss of funds, the connection of the 2 buildings could not be done. That was only a future proposal noted on the drawings, as well as an elevator. In 2004, after the new building was completed, an agreement apparently was made to allow the Hillsdale County Chamber of Commerce to use the first floor as their offices and visitor greeting center. In March 2010, the Hillsdale Community Development Committee voted to dump the Mitchell building. Apparently, they were not capable to maintain the building. In May, the city looked to transfer the Mitchell to the Hillsdale County Chamber of Commerce. That was nixed by the Hillsdale Community Chamber of Commerce when they realized that they did not have the funds to make repairs that were due at that time, and they moved out to another location. Apparently, during this time period, the library board that did not live up to their plan and allowed the Mitchell to go into disrepair, roof leaks, heating problems, etc. In early 2011, after disregarding the dumping the building by the city council, the city manager found some funds designated for the Mitchell building, allowing for a new roof, an HVAC system, and exterior painting. This allowed the Friends of the Mitchell Research Center, who had formed a 501c corporation to help fund their equipment, computers, bookcases, etc., to move to the first floor. No further work was done on the building except some minor work. This leads to today, when there are over 29 items that are urgently needed to keep the building safe for the public use, as was established in the original plan and paid for by the benefactors. Why did the library board allow the Mitchell to get in disrepair, as they apparently took it upon themselves to dissolve their responsibility as outlined in the plan for the future of the library? Their neglect of the wishes of the benefactors has been inexcusable. As members of the committee in charge of the library, you need to start the renovations to the Mitchell. Note, I have suggested getting honest bids so you can adjust your library budget for coming budget years. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Richard. And thank you for all your research you've done on this. I've learned a great deal about the history of the Mitchell building and some of the past councils and agreements between them and the will of the Mitchell family regarding the building. It's very interesting, and it's been an unfortunate situation. Any discussion on that item? Keep in mind we'll be discussing this very shortly. We'll move on in the packet to communications petitions, item letter B, and that is July 3rd Independence Day Parade. We're excited to announce that registration for the City of Hillsdale's Independence Day Parade at 6 p.m. Wednesday, July 3rd. Remember, folks, we hold that on the 3rd. It's now open. Whether you're representing a local civic or religious organization, school, business, float, marching band, or other, we invite you to help us celebrate America's 248th birthday. Let's make this year's parade one to remember. The registration form and rules and regulations are attached. Paper copies of the registration form are available at the city clerk's office. And then Sam is the one that's handling the registration. So in the packet, there's a number of requirements to attend the parade, or excuse me, to be a participant in the parade, and the registration's also on there. It doesn't cost anything to be in the parade, but you do have to fill out a registration form. Sam, are those registration forms going to be available at the parking lot if somebody, in the past we haven't had registration, but the last year, so if a farmer that maybe shows up with his tractor and wants to be in the parade, are we going to be able to accommodate that?
Yep, so we did on the spot registration last year for folks that weren't able to get that completed in time. We'll do the same again this year. However, I would just really encourage folks to try to pre-register if you can. The reason we ask for registration forms is so we can help, organize the order of the parade and make sure that we have adequate room to line everyone up, just so everything flows better. So if you can do that ahead of the parade, that's greatly appreciated, but we just encourage people to come on out. It was a great parade last year. It was a blast organizing, and we hope to see a lot of entries this year.
Awesome, thank you, Sam. Hold on, Sam. Any questions for Sam before he sits down regarding the parade? Thank you, sir. Okay, we'll move into communications petitions. Item letter C, Hillsdale County Commissioner update. Commissioner Ingalls.
Thank you, Mayor, Council, City Manager. Brief update on the courthouse. In the next 2 weeks or so, by mid-June, you'll start seeing some of the tiers of the scaffolding coming down. Approximately 50% of the clay tiles have been replaced. And now, to finish that part of the project, we need to start getting the scaffolding off. So once you see that scaffolding come off, it's going to be big progress all in a short period of time. Still on track to be done end of summer, early fall for that project. We're also working on rehousing District Court. We've had meetings with the consultant, with the sheriff, independently with facilities, IT, and tomorrow we have meetings with the judges. We'll have a concept plan. We are intending to move that court into the district court into the Lifeways building. We'll be on the top floor of the Lifeways building. Michigan Works will still remain as a tenant in the downstairs portion. And then regarding Bankers Road, as of the last road commission meeting, approximately half of Bankers Road is complete now with an 1.5-inch overlay. That'll be finished up in the next week or two. That project is moving along very fast because of the level of destruction that occurred on Bankers Road over the summer, or over the winter. So by summer, we'll have a good road there. So, and if you have any questions, I'm happy to answer your questions. That completes my update for now.
Thank you, Commissioner Ingalls. Any questions for Doug? Thank you, Doug.
No.
Any discussion regarding anything in communications petitions before we move on? Okay, we've got no introduction, adoption of ordinances or public hearings tonight, so we'll move into old business item letter A, AMP near DG Michigan Solar Project contract. David.
Thank you, Mayor. I have Jay Campbell, the electric superintendent, here with me also to help answer questions that might come on this. But did want to, based on some of the comments made, kind of give a overview of the project and those involved with it. So the city of Hillsdale does not generate its own power for what we provide our customers. We actually purchase it on the market. We purchase into investments that provide us with energy. So our engines that we have here, the engines we're putting in, they are what's considered capacity. So we have those in case of an emergency because they're high dollar to run. Like our old gas engines, they're $150 a megawatt to run. Our new ones are about $300 to run on diesel. So we only will run them if we're called upon to put energy out into the grid. That's when we will run them. because all this is monitored through our energy partners at AMP, American Municipal Power. So Hillsdale, continuing the story, is part of a group that purchases power together. It's called the Michigan South Central Power Agency. That consists of Hillsdale, Coldwater, Marshall, and Clinton. We work together to invest in projects, whether they're in each of our own communities or in different states or different regions. We have invested in projects to actually provide energy and or additional capacity. And AMP, as I said, American Municipal Power, they are basically a nonprofit that works with 135 municipalities just like Hillsdale, mostly smaller, to manage their electric resources and power that they purchase. So AMP's analysts and our executive director from AMP and their engineers are the ones that recommended this component or this amount of power to the city of Hillsdale as part of this project. The project itself would be located in Coldwater, half of it, and half of it in Marshall, because they have the land and the ability to put the power into the grid. And so they would generate the power there through the solar panels. It would be fed into the grid and ultimately make its way our direction for the amount that we would purchase. At least that's how it's done on the books, because of the different hubs and how electricity is transmitted to different regions. Additionally, just to make everyone aware, the BPU board that also reviewed this is a member of, on the board. There are 3 engineers that are part of the board that analyze this as well. We have a banker, and then we have a business CEO that's on the board that evaluated this as well, and they were recommending it to the city council. Ultimately, all power purchases have to come to city council for final approval. So the recommendation is the 1.2 megawatts of power from the project. That equates for us to about 4.6% of our load per se. It would be for 25 years. The cost is about $69 a megawatt, which in comparison to what it costs us to run our engines at 150 or 300 is pretty fair. In the market right now, it is very fair. We've received quotes into the 80s and greater for solar and or other types of projects. The MSEPA board is routinely evaluating different projects. There's projects, larger project up in Lansing we're evaluating, and we probably will invest in as MSCPA as a group. And it's basically, when we invest in something like that, it is divvied up by who needs the power, who needs the capacity, who needs the different aspects of it. I can say one thing, and and I say this with all sincerity, because we received a number of letters that were sent against this proposal, and they all said, until you can guarantee that prices will not go up of power. I will guarantee you one thing: prices of power will go up, and that will equate and reflect in our energy bills. I will say, though, that the BPU board, the MSCPA board, who is representatives from Coldwater, Marshall, and Clinton, we're all small municipalities. We look to provide the best and most economical energy to our customers. I can say without hesitation, the city of Hillsdale, out of the 4, has the cheapest rates in MSEPA, and you would probably find that we have the cheapest rates in the entire region of southern Michigan, as we've examined them and been looking at them, particularly as it relates to larger investor-owned utilities. They are substantially higher than us. So what we look to do when we're investing in projects is much like you invest in stocks and bonds, kind of a dollar cost averaging, where we look at different projects in the timeline that the project provides, the amount in benefits from the project, whether it's energy, capacity, green energy recs. There's all these different nuances that from the federal government down to the state and in some cases local governments are putting on their electric utilities. But we look at all those things and weigh them, how they fit into our portfolio of energy assets. And in this case, it's a small project of our group, and it was recommended that through the AMP general manager and her engineers, that this would be beneficial to us over the long haul. Again, this wouldn't come online for another 2 years. So in another 2 years, I would guarantee you that the prices for this electricity in these types of projects will be that much higher just due to inflation. So I can't say that there's something, there will be something cheaper out there, because it's probably not going to happen. But I will say that we look at everything to try to find the cheapest alternatives for the community that provide the reliability that we desire. Jake?
I think you hit the nail on the head, David. I don't have much to add at this point, other than maybe to help answer any questions in regard to this.
Sure.
You're saying we have the lowest prices. What are you doing to keep those prices lower than everybody else's? Is it you're shopping around?
We do shop around. We really do monitor, and the finance committee's part of that, reviewing the bills. The BPU board reviews the financial bills every month. From an MSCPA side, we have a committee of city managers and the utility directors who reviews the bills over there to make sure that we're getting the value that we desire. I think it's also important to mention, we've had green energy, I don't want to say mandates, but requirements since 2015. So I venture to say that since 2015, the legislature hasn't been one side or the other. They've had both sides controlling the legislature from 2015 to now. Is it more extreme now with what was added? Yes. But we did have 15% or 10% in 2015. It went up to 15% in 2021, that we had to have green energy components in our mix. We're at 26% now as a city. We have hydro, we have wind, we have some solar, we have landfill gas, I believe. So we have a number of things, and again, we look at what makes sense, what's economical, and what the bottom line is. Now, with the new legislation, it requires the cities to be up to 50% renewable by 2030. And then, so it was 15% from 2023 to 2029. It goes to 50% in 2030 to 2034, and then it goes up. Again, the legislators haven't provided us with any necessary means to get there. They're hoping that technology will advance and things will progress, that we can reach those goals. If we can't, I'm sure that just my gut would say that they would look at the different requirements of their legislation, and depending on how the communities and agencies are doing, maybe adjust them. They might not. So what we do in looking at that is kind of balance and weigh that. Would we jump into a big project to get to 50%? No. But this is a small piece, that would take us from 26 to about 30%, and it's in our backyard. So in effect, it kind of made sense to recommend. And so what the contract does, or agreement, is the council agrees to let the person that they assigned, which would be myself, to make the final decision on it. We're still negotiating some of the final nuances of the project. If the project doesn't make sense, then I won't approve the agreement. This just basically moves in that direction to allow it to progress further for final numbers, for additional legwork to see if the project is completely viable. So that's what, kind of a summary in a nutshell. Jake, anything you want to add?
I think it's important to note, like you said, it will be under the MSCPA's control, as opposed to a third-party developer sitting in the middle, where somebody's got to skim some off the top. So as far as pricing goes, I don't think it's going to get a whole lot better than doing it yourself. Essentially is what we're doing on this one. We're not subject to curtailments and things like that. We'll be able to maintain all that ourselves. Yeah, it's pretty much it. It's pretty straightforward. Like David said, it's a small piece of our portfolio. Certainly allows us to get a little taste of it, if you will, and help take a little tiny bite at the apple to put us up to 30%. I don't think there's a lot of risk involved here. That's my take.
Thanks, Jake. Thanks, Dave. Councilman Soha.
Thank you, Mayor. Gentlemen, you said it was $69 a kilowatt hour, so I have a couple of questions. First is, what does it cost us a kilowatt hour for traditional gas or coal power fired energy?
Current rates on that, and it all depends on your time of purchase, so it's not as simple as, it's about, I would say, current rates are about $55 or so. They can go, and why I say that is I have a sheet here, and they're depending on the time of day, so we get a sheet and it gives us a price every hour for 24 hours that they're anticipating. Jake monitors this on a daily basis, and we've seen it go from $30 to $1,000 in the same day because of the needs of the grid globally. And when it's $1,000, it behooves us to run our current engines. Either they're telling us to run our current engines because they need the power into the grid, or it behooves us to run them because we can make money by putting that energy. We can make $700 on, our new engines, $700 an hour by running them for a period of time, or greater, $850 if it's the older engines. So it really can be from $30 to $1,000, and we've seen that in the last month. But if you if you purchase some in a block or a commodity, it's usually, you can get a stable price, and that's what we're doing here, is providing for a stable price and something that's reasonable in our backyard. I will say this, that in the state of Michigan, there are no new gas, coal, any of those type of projects in what we call the development queue. The whole thing is full with solar and wind projects, and it takes about 5 years to get through the queue. So literally, we would not be buying any traditional energy from any place necessarily in Michigan. It'd be from Ohio or potentially Indiana or someplace else.
It's very silly.
Follow-up?
Sure.
Thank you, Mayor. So if the state had not mandated that we are required to have 50% by 2030 and 100% by 2040, which is unattainable, and it's going to make prices skyrocket, especially I fear. would the city be pursuing solar alternative energy sources if it wasn't mandated? And if we don't hit those goals, will the city be punished by Lansing financially?
Sure. On the goals, and the potential punishment, that's 5 years away to see where that would start. And they do not have any type of punishment in place yet. They just haven't gotten that far within the process. But they've indicated there would be penalties, and they would be most likely financial penalties requiring you to have, get to your certain amount of green energy assets. It would probably be a function of time, but I'm speculating, because that's 5 years out and probably different folks at the state level, different folks all the way around. That I hope that's the best answer I can give you on that part of your question. Would we still be considering this project? I would say we probably would, because of our need based on energy and what they consider from the federal level green energy recs. We still have those requirements. That's above and beyond the state. So we have probably a half a dozen agencies that we have to respond and answer to.
I was gonna add, MISO also requires us to buy in zone. We can only buy so much power out of our zone, which is zone 7 of MISO. So it's not just Lansing at work here, it's Lansing, it's MISO, it's FERC. We have to comply with all of their rules. This being in zone 7 is helpful, not just to meet green energy or renewable energy requirements, it's helpful to get us power in zone 7, our zone.
Could you define those acronyms for me?
MISO, Mid-Continent Grid Operator, they're the ones, they function from roughly Canada all the way to Louisiana and into the east side of Texas. And then FERC is the Federal Energy, I don't know all the
Regulatory Commission.
Regulatory Commission, yeah. So we have to comply with all of those, it's not just Lansing. So there's benefits to each one of those. I guess what I was gonna point out is that being zone 7 in our backyard, like David is alluding to, there's an added benefit to that also.
So to summarize, we're being strong-armed and forced to buy power from wind and solar farms that are considered green, which is, in my opinion, a misnomer. And if we don't comply, there's the potential that we will suffer economic harm through penalties at the federal and state level.
It's called the bribe and the threat. If it wasn't for the renewable energy mandates, we would still have our coal plant in Litchfield, the Endicott plant, what we owned a piece of, which provided hundreds of great jobs to local residents in this area. It's the bribe and the threat. And, the other thing is they don't like municipal power at all. I mean, the big two in the state of Michigan, DTE and Consumers Energy, they get tons of subsidies to do these green energy projects. So it's nothing off their back for them to do them, and they just pass the cost on to the consumer. I don't know. I don't think the state of Michigan, Lansing, Washington, D.C., I don't think they like municipal power in general. So I think part of having to be able to exist and have the autonomy of municipal power is to push back against some of this crap. That's my opinion.
That's my opinion as well. I would like to add, the 1.2 kilowatts is what percentage of our total energy consumption?
It's megawatts, and
that's what I meant.
it would be 4.6%.
So for 4%, I'm gonna vote no, just in principle, but also because I want to send a message. It's tyrannical, in my opinion, what the democratically controlled legislature and governor have done in our state, and learning of these mandates or being reminded of the federally mandated ones is another form of soft tyranny, and it irritates me.
Councilman Beer.
I'm definitely going to support this. And the reason being, the BPU board, which looked into this very seriously, recommends that we do this. I don't want to be going to board meetings. I think that the whole point of having committees and boards to oversee, in this case, the BPU, the city's public utility, is to bring to council sound decisions that actually in the end will get the power to us, the consumers, at the most reasonable rates. Just to give you a couple numbers, okay. Consumers' power at the cheapest rate right now is somewhere in the neighborhood of 14.9 per kilowatt. All right, but then if you take it to, like Dave was saying earlier, depending on the time of day. So you're in your home and you get home from work and it's in that peak hour, they can charge you up to 21.5 for a kilowatt. Currently in the city of Hillsdale, our rate is 10.5, which even if you take the best rate from consumers, that's considerably under that. Now, I don't like the mandates either. They're draconian, but at the same time, if you're gonna play in the game, you gotta play by the rules. And so we can make a statement and say, no, this isn't good because I don't like Washington, Lansing, or whoever telling us how we're gonna get our power. But as you know, that doesn't help Litchfield's power plant. Is that operational? No, that's closed. That's reality. And then of course, then you can go and say, my goodness, well, we're gonna wait till this election, we're gonna get some new electors in there and they're gonna change this. But all I can do is vote for what is on the table in front of me and what is. I cannot vote on what might be. Now, but I agree totally with you. I don't like this whole green energy mandates or anything else. But I think the BPU, the board, just looking at the rates, has done an exceptional job. And if we want to keep our municipal power company, we need to support our BPU. And the BPU board has come to this council to ask to do this, and with the 4.6, we're at 26, that's gonna get us covered for the mandate. We'll have our 30% covered to 2030. So we've got all our green energy. Another thing to keep in mind is it's not like we're gonna necessarily have to use it. We have the ability to use it. And so if you're plugged into that and we don't need it, we can always sell it. So from that standpoint, I think we need to give more confidence in our boards, in this case, the BPU board, and for that reason, I'm gonna support it.
Yeah, Tony, you're always very pragmatic, and I respect that about you very much. And, I think you're very strong, very smart man. But if we support 9 out of 10 things that the Board of Public Utilities brings us, then we're supporting the Board of Public Utilities. We vote on their recommendations all the time, down the line almost. Every time they bring something up here, I support it. Because I agree with you. There's smart people on that board, and they're doing a community service. And I don't like to push back against our boards because they are doing a public service and they're bringing this to us in good faith. But you can say you don't like the mandates, but if people don't push back against them once in a while, they're just going to keep coming and coming and coming. Once in a while, you got to tell these people no, I think. And that's where I'm coming from, at least. They'll never stop if local communities don't exercise a little autonomy and say, no, we don't want to do this. Councilman Sharp.
I'm going to vote for this too. I agree with it. I think we need it. We should have a tool in our toolbox. Our electric rates are going up this year, folks, next month, 2%. Your water bill's going up 10%. Your sewer rates are going up 5%. That's a fact. That's reality. We can't control that, but we have to have the service. And as you can see, with all the work going around town, all the water mains they've been fixing, all the stuff that's been going on, we've neglected it for years. We are finally fixing things. It's a reality of life. I'm retired. I'm almost on a fixed income. I don't like it either, but I want to make sure my lights are gonna turn on every day, and that's what I'm gonna vote for. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman Sharp. Councilman Wolfram.
I just have two questions. One is at the term of the agreement, it says that it's going to be effective for 25 years, but up to 35 years. Who makes that decision on that part? Like it's a section 1 term?
Yes. So the original term would be 25 years, and if there was viable life after that, it could be extended.
But who would be doing the extending? Would they be doing the extending, or would we be doing the extending?
Well, it would require both parties. We would have to come back to extend it.
And then the second thing I had was on the fee itself, the $69. It wasn't clear to me that they couldn't raise that during the period that were of the 25 years.
The $69 would be a flat fee. Some agreements have escalators. This one would not, and I received that information this afternoon.
So it'll be $69 for 25 years?
Yes.
Okay.
Councilman Morrissey.
I have a question about the wording of it in one section. Page 4, Section 7, Renewable Energy Credits, reads as follows. All environmental attributes available to AMP under the NEER DG Michigan Solar PPA may be monetized by AMP at municipality's direction and credited pro rata to the municipality. Such pro rata amounts are to be determined by multiplying the municipality's percentage contract amount times the actual environmental attributes available to AMP from time to time under the NEER DG Michigan Solar PPA. Alternatively, in the event that the municipality wishes to represent the energy supplied hereunder as renewable at the direction of the municipality, and AMP will direct credit or retire the environmental attributes or like environmental credits. Could anyone translate that into the English language for me?
You want to take a stab?
I can take a stab. So for every given amount of renewable energy, you actually not only get the energy and get credit for the capacity, you also get what are called renewable energy credits. Those can be sold on the market. Those can be sold in other states for substantially more than their value in Michigan at times, or it could be vice versa. So at our direction, the RECs that we were entitled to by our percentage of this agreement could be sold at our direction, which would offset some of that $69 megawatt cost if we could sell them at a profit, which...
Like you were talking about that earlier, in other words, selling
RECs,
other places. Okay.
Yeah, you can sell RECs, you can buy RECs, that's another option, but you can only buy RECs up until 2030 or 2029 to satisfy your requirement.
We get them from various projects that the government deems green or energy, and we can sell them like the ones in Ohio. They get more. We can sell them for greater cost there, the ones from our hydros, and then we can buy them cheaper here. So AMP monitors that, and then we decide as an agency or as a whether to sell that.
And so this 6875, just following up on Councilman Wolfram's point, that's despite inflation or anything else. Yes. That's just so essentially we're going to be paying a lot less, assuming that inflation is going to go up in the next 25 years.
Over time, yes. In fact, we were looking at another project that was only for 10 years, and it started kind of at a fairly similar rate, but it had an annual escalator, and it ended up closer to $80 over 10 years. And most of them do have the escalator.
And there's no guarantee that the fossil fuels are going to stay the same.
No.
Councilman Beer?
One final point on that. So if this council decides not to put this 1 point whatever megawatts in our toolbox, that represents about 4% of our usage at $68 a megawatt. And we happen to get in a situation where we can't get it online or through our group, and we have to fire up the generators at the lake. That's gonna cost us $150 a megawatt. And if for whatever reason that's not operational, we have to do the new natural gas one out in the industrial park, that's gonna be $300 a megawatt. So really, I think it really behooves us to support this.
Thank you, Councilman Beer. Councilman Palladino?
So are we getting rid of something from our portfolio? What are we replacing with the 4.6%?
So, as I mentioned, we layer things in, so we'll have various amounts of energy packages that we'll layer in, and they periodically come off. So this is something we're putting into our portfolio for something that's came off or timed out per se. So this is just an add to get us back to our needed portfolio requirements.
And what are we losing? Natural gas? Is it clear?
I don't know specifically what we're losing. I would imagine that it's probably natural gas. So probably yes.
It's natural gas or coal, it's one or the
Yes,
other.
one or the other.
And there's no way to get that back at this point. Do we know what the net increase in cost for the average citizen of Hillsdale will be? So is 55 all sources, by the way, or is that coal and natural gas?
That's basically market price.
For all sources?
When you buy it off the market, yeah.
When you buy it off the market?
Pretty much.
And it doesn't say where
Unless you enter into an agreement with one of these other generation facilities, you're not specifically buying coal or natural gas. You're buying it off the market, what's available on the market.
Okay, and what percentage of our power are we buying off the market versus stuff that we've contracted, energy that we've contracted?
We can, we're allowed to purchase up to 5% of our portfolio kind of spot off the market, but everything else has to be tied up with a power purchase agreement, either short-term or long-term. We do a variety of things.
And what is our contractual cost in comparison to the market rate?
Contractual cost.
All of the energy, it sounds like about 95% that we're not purchasing off the market, is that correct?
Correct, yes, right.
Okay, so it's, the 5% is at $55 a megawatt.
Yes.
What is the stuff that we're contracting?
Well, some of our other stuff like coal and natural gas, some of the bigger power plants, we're down probably into the $30 range, but they run continually. But the fact of the matter is the federal government's regulating them out of existence, and they're just kind of routinely closing down, so that power is dropping off, and unfortunately, it's coming back on with higher cost.
So our all-cost energy is not 55 total?
Correct.
Do we know what that is?
I don't have that data in front of me. I mean, I don't know if it's in the package from AMP, each one's in there, but I don't know if it's been weighted average, I don't have that number, like a weighted average number.
Yeah, we just don't have, we can get what our total cost is, that's not a problem, we just, in fact, I kind of tried to look for it, but I didn't find the presentation, but it is lower than, $69 is higher than what we currently provide for, but that's what the current market is for this.
And we are prohibited by law from getting this 4.6% off the open market at the $55 current rate. We have to contract out for this power.
Yes, we can only do 5% of it, and we typically do that 5%.
We're using all of that capacity, and that's a state law or federal regulation.
I think it's MISO.
Yeah,
It's a MISO rule.
It is MISO, yeah.
It's a MISO rule.
Okay. Yeah, I'd be interested to see the total weighted cost, contractual versus total market, and then what the cost will be if we introduce this 4.6% and its effect on the weighted average, and then that effect on the median or mean utility bill in the city of Hillsdale.
It could be done, yeah.
I mean, are we talking a 2% increase for the citizens of Hillsdale, or, you know, a 30%? And also if we implement the full 50%, what are we talking, right? These are the sort of specifics we need to know if we were going to actually say no to these sorts of things, right? Because there would be no point in resisting this if it's, you know, a 3% increase over the next 6 years. But if it's going to be massive,
I don't think it will be massive, because you're talking about 4% of our portfolio.
right, but we're talking about a total of 24% that we'll have to add an addition. Let's just say it's at this current rate of $69, even in comparison to the market rate, which is much higher than our actual rate, we could still be potentially looking at a 30% increase.
I don't think you, I couldn't say specifically, and I don't think anyone can until you actually look at the numbers. But I will say, that's why we do the layering, is because, you know, any particular time when you're, depending on what you're purchasing, what's available, what you need. I mean, for solar, for example, they give you what's considered a capacity rate of 20%. So because they can only consider it generating power 20% of the time, where your natural gas and your coal and those, they can operate darn near 100%, probably 95%. So it all depends, you know, of your economies of scale and all that. But you know, we can get those numbers. I don't think it really will make that much of a difference to our energy portfolio, because it's only a megawatt and 1.2.
I understand for this project. I'm talking about the long-term strategy of the remaining 24%. If we buy into that at the rate of $69 a megawatt hour and replace that whole remaining 24%, even at that rate, which you're saying is a good rate, we're still, you know, depending on whether we're taking the market rate or our contractual rate, so we're going up $25, potentially $30.
Yeah, you're saying to get up to 50%
Yes.
renewable. I'm sorry, that's where you lost me.
Because I don't
I'm
want to
sorry.
vote just on this.
We're talking about 4% today, and that's it. That's all that's available. To get to that
Right.
50% level, that other, you know, 20% after this, if we were to
Right.
go with this. I'm sorry, I was totally lost. I was confused. But yeah, that's for the future. We don't know. I will add that I've been watching market power prices since this meeting started, and it's varied between $43 and $615 on the open market just since this meeting started.
Right, but we're saying that the open market isn't necessarily a good gauge, since we're buying 95% of our power at contractual rates, not market rates.
Correct. I think that's David's point, though. Take it off the market, guarantee it for 25 years at $69 for that 1 megawatt. That's, unless I'm misunderstanding what you're asking.
No, that's exactly right. I'm just wondering, if our current contractual rate is less than $55, how much more is this power project? Yeah, I'll let.
It's all over the place, so yeah, we'd have to dig in, like David said.
Councilman Beer.
It's basically just a math problem. So you have 94% or 96% of your power's coming at $55 a megawatt. Okay? That comes out to $52.80. 5%. No, this is, I mean, well, I was just, to make it easy, I was going 96 and 4. It's actually a little bit over 4%. You could take 5 if you wanted. I just did it at 96% at 55, 4% that this is gonna add to our grid, that we're gonna be paying $68 on. And add them all up and then divide it, you're looking at, our average cost would go to $55.56. So it would be basically, I don't know math, but it'd be another 56 per megawatt. And of course, we're talking homes use kilowatts, correct?
Correct.
Right.
Kilowatt hours.
And kilowatt is it a 1,000th or
1,000.
1,000th of a megawatt? So, if you were to, if your home used, say, a megawatt, you'd be looking at $55.56 as opposed to $55. So.
You're using the market.
True, right, but I mean, it all works out because what we pay in power is dependent on what the BPU gets their power at.
You also have to, it's not really as simple as that, because some of the power we purchase is for certain times of the day. This power would be during our peak time of the day, during, sun up to sundown. And sometimes we're just layering power in for a certain period of the day, whether it be nighttime. So it's not as simple as, you're buying one batch of power and it's a 24-hour block. It could be, a 16-hour block for 5 days because you don't need it on the weekends. So they're actually looking at when we use our power and when we need power, and that's the layering in. So it's a little more complex when you come to and that's why consumers put a time of use charge in there where they pretty much double your rate from 2 to 7.
2 to 7. Yep.
Yeah, if it's 1.5.
Yeah.
Councilman Wolfram.
I mean, in some ways, this is, now that I wanted to make clear that it was gonna be the $69 for the 25 years. I mean, in some sense, it's like buying insurance. Like, you're locking in the $69. Now, there's a chance, something might happen and we discover a new way to produce energy and everything falls down to $20, in which case we shouldn't have bought the insurance. But on the other hand, there's some probability that it might go to $130, in which case we've bought the insurance. And we're talking about less than 5% of our total. So I think that, again, knowing that it's the $69 is guaranteed for the 25 years, I see it as more of an insurance, buying insurance.
Any more discussion regarding this agenda item?
I would like to see a projection. Let's even say we can get this rate, which is good, supposedly locked in. What will power costs for the citizens of Hillsdale look like if we comply and follow all the way up to 50%, assuming this best case scenario? I sort of feel like with the trash contract discussion where I don't quite have the information, I would like to make a decision. But it's been very helpful, so thank you both.
Yeah, you guys do a great job. You guys do, absolutely. Jake, Dave, fabulous job.
We'll work on getting that information and bring it back to both the BPU board and here, so we can have a fuller discussion.
Move to approve.
Motion on the floor from Councilman Veer, seconded by Councilman Sharp. Can I have a roll call, City Clerk, please?
Councilperson Sharp?
Yes.
Soha? Stuchel? Veer?
Yes.
Wolfram?
Yes.
Mayor Stockford?
No.
Councilperson Morrissey?
Yes.
And Palladino? 5 yes, 3 no, it's approved. That's resolution 3605 as well.
3605?
Correct, yes.
Okay, we'll move on. That was our only old business item, so we'll move into new business. item should be A, but it says B, but that's all right. We'll move into new business, item A, Q4 budget amendments. Karen?
Hi there. At the end of the fiscal year, which is happening in just a few short weeks, we have to make sure that we are reviewing all of our different accounts and making sure that we are projecting we don't go over. So we bring an end of the year budget amendment to you. As a reminder, in the general fund, we adopt the budget by department, so we cannot go over by department. And then for all the other funds, it's the fund in total that we cannot go over. So rather than going over each one of these, I'm wondering if it might be more expeditious to ask if there are any questions about the individual budget amendments, or if you'd like me to review them individually.
Does anybody have any questions?
Well, I was just wondering, it appears that we have excess expenditures of $3 million, is that correct? Like 3.475?
Yes, so, yes, because we had approved at a previous meeting to move our excess funding per our fund balance policy into our capital projects fund. So that's just, the $3 million is a one-time transfer for fiscal year 23-24. So it's not that the budget was unbalanced, it's that we brought to the council, they approved a transfer.
Thank you.
Thank you, Karen. Any more questions? No, do I have a motion to approve the budget resolution? Motion on the floor from Councilman Sharp, seconded by Councilman Veer. May I have a roll call, please, City Clerk?
Yes. Councilperson Soha? Stuchel? Veer?
Yes.
Wolfram? Mayor Stockford?
Yes.
Councilperson Morrissey?
Yes.
Palladino? And Sharp? 8-0, it's approved. It's resolution 3606.
Thank you, Katie. Okay, we will move into item B in new business, which is to set a public hearing to revoke the industrial facilities tax certificate 2017-181, and that's for Core Coil Composite LLC. And remember, we are just setting a public hearing here. So you guys remember the meeting? Yep, 221 Industrial Drive. Mr. Homovec agreed to have certain things done within 6 months, and I assume that he has not met those benchmarks. So we will set a public hearing for the next meeting, which would be June 17th, 2024, to consider adopting a resolution revoking his industrial facilities exemption certificate. Sam, do you have anything to add to that?
I would just kind of reiterate what you said. You know, we're bringing this back to council as requested. Back at the October meeting, council determined not to take any action to revoke the certificate at that time, but to provide an additional 6 months for Mr. Homovec to make progress towards commencing with production or hiring of employees. Attached in the packet is a correspondence we've received from Mr. Homovec, as well as the most recent report that he had filed with our city assessor's office. It is the city's opinion that he is not in compliance with that IFE agreement, which is why we're bringing it back again to council. We would just request that you set a public hearing for the next meeting so we can notify Mr. Homovec, give him a chance to attend the meeting and provide any comments that he has, and then you guys can make a motion or adopt a resolution to recommend that the state tax commission go ahead and revoke that IFE certificate.
Thank you, Sam. Councilman Sharp.
What is the taxes he owes us? Dollar figure, let's get an amount here.
So I don't have that information right now. I'd have to get with Kim, the assessor's office. There is a clawback provision, so if that certificate does get revoked, there would be a certain amount that he would owe. And I know, I believe the EDC at one time too had provided some funds as well. So I think there's a question on the exact amount that we need to look into. That's something that we can have for you at the next meeting.
Please do.
Yep. Councilman Wolfram?
My understanding is that he spent, is it $500,000 on the building, or how much did he spend on the building so far?
If you look in the packet, there is a report that he has provided where he places a number on what he claims his restoration investment is. And those are the figures that he's provided us.
And do we, if he doesn't fix up the building, is there an idea that somehow that building would be put up for sale again and we would sell it, or it would be sold?
Well, this is, and again, I don't want to get, too into the details here, just for the purpose of setting this public hearing. Both Kim and I will, kind of lay out our case at the next meeting, but essentially all we are doing is saying that there was an agreement with the city, an IFE agreement. He stated on an application he was going to commence with production and hire a certain number of employees in order to get this tax exemption. The city feels that those requirements were not met, and that this tax abatement should be revoked. The city can't actually revoke it. We have to request that the state tax commission revokes it. If we adopt a resolution asking them to revoke this, he would have the opportunity to appeal to the state tax commission if they choose to revoke it. But our concern is just that the requirements are not being met, in our opinion.
Councilman Sharp?
He's been here a couple times, and he's promised us the sun and the moon, and he still hasn't delivered on either. I mean, that building, I worked there, I know what that building looks like, and it just sits empty. And it's a good-looking building, and it's got a chance. But I realize he's going through the court things, and he's using that. But how long do we continue on when he promised the last time he'd have 12 jobs? Yes, Mr. Attorney.
We probably shouldn't get into debating
let's
this
just
and discussing it.
set the
in
public
advance of
hearing.
public hearing.
I move that we set the public hearing.
Motion on the floor from Councilman Morrissey, seconded by Councilman Sharp to set a public hearing for the next meeting, which is June 17th, 2024 at 7 p.m. All in favor? Any opposed? The ayes have it. All right, we will move into new business item letter C, which is Community Development Committee's Mitchell Building recommendation. Dave.
Thank you, Mayor. The Community Development Committee had met on May 13th. We had a pretty good number of members of the public there as well that commented. After that considerable discussion, the CDC recommended recommended to the full council, which is what we're here considering tonight, giving the Mitchell Research Center a 5-year lease for $500 per month. The idea behind the community development recommendation for a 5-year lease is that this would give the Mitchell Research Center time to fundraise and develop a long-term operational plan.
Thank you, Dave. So we've done 2 leases with them in the past, correct? And they were both for 1 year. Is my memory correct on this?
We had a 1 year, and then we're in a half a year right now.
We're in a half-year lease right now.
And I think it was suggested to give them another 6 months to the end of the year. But then this 5-year lease came into the mix as well.
Okay. Just because I know we end up, when the Mitchell comes up, it seems like we end up regurgitating a lot of information that we've gone over in the past. We have offered the Mitchell Research Center as an organization to buy the building at some point, have we not?
That has been discussed.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. How do the Mitchell Research people feel about the 5-year lease agreement? Are they in favor of that, and they feel like that would give them time to get some ground under their feet? And
yes, I would believe so. Drew Gelser was kind of their representative at the community development meeting where that was discussed, and kind of a consensus that came out of it. So I think the group felt at that time that it would give them enough time to get their plan together and to get their fundraising. I think one thing that I would say, because I know there are some on this board that are concerned with the length of time and that it would, that if nothing changes or transpires in the next 5 years, the building is just 5 years older and nothing's been done with it. I would say maybe this is something that to compromise would be that we add the Mitchell folks would come in here annually and give us a report on how they're progressing towards their plans to be self-sufficient.
I wanted to answer Miss Webb's question because she wanted to know what we were gonna do with the $500 a month, the $6,000. So, Miss Webb, the people who are currently inhabiting the Mitchell building are a not-for-profit. So the Michigan Constitution says that municipalities, cities cannot give resources away to not-for-profits. That's why when we do business with Domestic Harmony, we do a contract with them for services. And it's specifically Domestic Harmony that we can do that with, and that was just a very recent law. But essentially, we can't just let them, this is a not-for-profit and a city-owned building, we can't just allow them to just exist in the building without charging them something. So if last I had checked, it cost between $30,000 and $60,000 a year to upkeep that building. Is that correct?
It's the bare minimum is around 15,000.
15,000. Okay, I've heard lots of different
We've spent
numbers.
more there, but yes,
Okay,
15,000 is
15,000 to
utilities
upkeep the building.
and basic cost. Yes.
Okay. Okay. So that's why there's some sort of charge for that specific organization to be in the building. Now we could, what I heard, I think it was Mr. Mason, suggested, and maybe another person suggested that we could connect the two buildings together and make the Mitchell, part of the library again. And I think that's a good idea personally. I would be all in favor of that. But that wouldn't change the relationship between the Mitchell Research Center, not-for-profit, being in that building, except for that they would then be under the direction and supervision of the library board and the library director. So, do the people of the Mitchell Research, do they understand that, if it was to become part of the library, if it became the library again, that
I don't know.
I'm not sure if they could continue existing in the building, because is that correct or is it not correct?
They could probably still lease space in the building.
They could still lease space in the building? Well then, that doesn't sound like a bad idea to me then. Tom? Yes. If we connected the building, if we connected the Mitchell Research Center with the public library, could we still lease space to a not-for-profit in that?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, you can lease space in any public building to anyone you want.
That's good to know, actually.
Yes, it could be a commercial, it could be a nonprofit. I mean, you just have to make sure that you're getting fair value for the lease. That's all.
Okay. Councilman Sharp?
The $6,000, do they pay the electric bill with that money, or does the city?
They pay us and we use that money to pay some of the bills, yes.
Okay, I just wanted to get that clear, because somebody was mentioning the $6,000, and I know if we are paying the electric bill or the gas bill and stuff, I just wanted to have that cleared. Thank you.
Yeah, it's not profit, that was suggested, no.
Councilman Wolfram?
I just want to make a comment that this is part of a National Historic District. Like, it's very unique that Hillsdale is a National Historic District, the downtown. And one of the contributing buildings to this National Historic District is the Mitchell Library. And they provide all sorts of information. In fact, at the last Rotary meeting, Roy Finch was asked a question about the Hillsdale County, he does the at the Hillsdale County Brewing, I asked him about the building itself and the history of it, and he said that he had gone to the Mitchell Library and was able to come up with all this information about it. So there's lots of benefits that are coming from the people that are doing this service. And like I said, I think it's very important that maybe we can make the connection between the two buildings. I think it's very important that the Mitchell Library was given by Mr. Mitchell in order to be a library. It, as I said, it is a contributing building to the National Historic District, so I think it's very important that we keep that.
No, I'm encouraged that we've made the progress to this point of the 5-year lease, because from what I'm hearing right now at the council table, we could do the 5-year lease with the people at the Mitchell building, and we could still pursue connecting the two buildings, and it would not affect any sort of relationship that is in place right now. Correct, Tom?
Yes.
Okay. Councilman Palladino.
In the current legal framework, the city owns it, right? Because all of the deed requirements have been voided. You indicated that, I believe.
Well, the restriction that the last remaining people who would have had, who the property would have reverted to, have basically disclaimed their interest and indicated that it's the city's.
Okay. So the requirements are what they are, but no one's going to call us on them. No one has the legal authority to call us on it.
In effect, they're gone.
They're
So
void.
there are no
Okay.
restrictions.
In the, with the city owning the building and the library, I know our funds are different. Would it be illegal currently for the library to contribute any funds toward the city property?
Do you mean the library board?
Yes.
Well, that's actually part of the city, so the statute provides that the city can, raise a certain amount of money to support the library, but to the extent that part of that would go to maintain the structure within which the library sat, yeah, that's a legitimate expenditure.
But if we don't currently own the library, the Mitchell,
The city owns it.
and is that a legal distinction that the city owns it? Can the library take any authority over it while it's in the city's ownership?
The library board is part of the city. It's not a separate entity unto itself. That's why the appointments come from the mayor. It is part and parcel of the city government. It's a
Then
separate board
what is
under
what is the legal transfer that occurred in 2011?
I think what Josh is asking is, we wouldn't use library fund money to fix something at the Board of Public Utilities. I think what he's asking is, since the Mitchell building isn't currently the library, can the library board use its operating funds for the library to do anything with the Mitchell building legally?
Could we pay to upkeep Bobby's Park? I don't know. You know what I mean?
Well, so it depends upon what the use the library might make of the building. So to the extent that it's considered in some form or fashion part of the library, if you used it for storage, if you had part of your collections there, whatever the case might be, then I'd say, that those funds could be used because they're there to support the library. But that deals with that separate fund that comes from the funds that are raised under statute for that purpose. So to answer your question, it has to go for some purpose under the statute related to supporting the library. What that means could be interpreted differently depending on what it was you intended to do. But in some form or fashion, the actual library would have to have some presence in that building to be able to do that.
And would that include control by the library board? Would have to.
There is no control by the library board. It's owned by the city.
To spend money on the building, would there have to be library control?
No.
Okay.
It would just have to be used
For those purposes.
associated with maintaining a free public library.
Okay, great, thank you. With the current contract, now that it's been brought up, should we have a fee-for-services type of contract? They are providing genealogical, archival services that could be provided by the library is not providing them, therefore we're paying this nonprofit for those services. Do we need that sort of coverage in the contract?
If the library was to spend some of its money for that purpose, is that what you're talking about?
Or the city, because we're covering, I guess that was about $9,000 the city is covering on average.
Well, so that's a little different thing, because when you think about it, the city has to maintain the building anyway. So it's not as though the entirety of whatever the city spends to maintain that building is money that they otherwise wouldn't be spending, but for the fact that the Mitchell Research Library is located there, the nonprofit. There may be a component of increased costs that presumably would be part of what the lease agreement would be there to help offset, in addition to maybe having a little bit that goes toward the additional maintenance costs.
Okay.
So the main thing that the only thing the city really has to worry about is the amount that they're leasing it to this nonprofit for. Does that reflect fair value for their use of that space that they use?
Okay. So, in short, there is no requirement for a physical connection between the two buildings in order for there to be a fiduciary or even political connection between them in terms of library board governance.
Well, a fiduciary, there would be no kind of fiduciary relationship. That's a special thing. And it has to do with agency law.
Okay.
If you're talking about a financial relationship, again, any financial relationship in terms of expenditures of that separately levied millage.
Yes.
For library purposes would solely be based upon whatever use the library might make of that space. So it would have to be tied to that. It doesn't have to be a physical connection.
Okay.
Library could have a substation or a bookmobile or something like that that expends library funds on. So it's not tied to the building, it's tied to the use of it for purposes of having a free public library.
Great, thank you. That clarifies things. Yeah, so my concern with the 5-year lease here is that we don't have any provisions in there that at some point someone is going to step up to start caring for the building. Looking at the, walking through it with Richard and looking at the estimates, there's something like $40,000 in mold and sort of structural basement issues. If we don't get a grant in this 5-year period, are we just going to let that lapse for 5 years? I would just like to see some provision that at some point someone is going to step in and start caring at least for the structural integrity of the building. Okay, we don't maybe need to paint it and renovate it or fix the lights or things like that, but we need some sort of clause in here that someone steps in and says, okay, we're not going to let this building get into serious disrepair during that period. And maybe that period isn't in the next 5 years. I guess I don't know. But I also don't know if really anyone knows that, right? Because it's so old. So I don't know how we could include that there. Maybe we could use part of the $6,000 to start contributing to the repair of the building, and we're putting it back into the building. I would just like to see some sort of earmark that if grants aren't obtained to maintain the building, someone is going to step in to provide that maintenance.
Councilman Saha.
And to add to that, why 5 years? Why couldn't we just continue the 1-year leases in perpetuity? And then if concerns like the mold remediation or building repair come up, then we can address them every year at council and find a remediation. Why 5 years at this particular moment?
They're concerned that they won't be eligible for grants if the period is less than 5 years, I believe.
Okay. Tony?
Just what Josh was saying, that would enable the Friends of the Mitchell to procure grant funding because they'd be considered in a long-term leasing agreement.
Any more questions? I mean, if we're in the same spot in 5 years, we're gonna be in trouble with the building. I think Josh is correct about that. It's an old house. They start to deteriorate and then they deteriorate. And they continue to, like us, when we start to get old. Happens quickly. Councilman Beer.
I believe that we won't be in the same spot in 5 years. The Friends of the Mitchell have a lot of enthusiasm, and they have some new members that I think will go forward and procuring some grant funding. I think we'll be in a better spot.
I think if this is what the Friends of the Mitchell building need to get some steam, then sounds great. Motion on the floor from Councilman Sharp, seconded by Councilman Veer to approve the 5-year lease with the Friends of the Mitchell. All in favor? Any opposed? The ayes have it. Okay, we've got no miscellaneous reports, so we'll move to general public comment. During this time, the podium will be open. Please limit your comments to 3 minutes. Please limit your trips to 1 to the podium. And during this period, you may speak on whatever your heart so desires. Podium's now open.
Richard Smith, as you may know. I go back to the plan that I gave to the committee. The plan that was presented in 1999 to the citizens of Hillsdale and also the citizens of 3 townships that had to approve this building, the new addition to the library. And I'm going to read one paragraph. The existing library would be reconfigured to provide additional programming space and a community meeting room and to house the library's historical and genealogical collections. Now, they did say all floors would be accessible via elevator, but as we know, that money disappeared. But that paragraph, and to house the library's historical and genealogical collections. That was by the public library at that time in 1999. So it's always been the library. And if you talk to anybody, you'll say, well, the Mitchell, people call there, they call there for, they always, the Mitchell Library, it's the Mitchell Library. The new building is just a community addition, basically, because everybody looks at it as part of the library, which I don't understand the problem of not being able to use library funds to maintain the library. And quite frankly, if I brought in a health department person, they might close the building down. The mold, I gave you people a report that was done 3 years ago. Had mold and water. It still has mold and water. It doesn't go away. Why you neglected it, I have no idea. But it has been neglected. So I want to bring that point up. It's, as far as I'm concerned, the library is a library. Whether it's connected or not, it's still the library because it was made designated to house the historical collections, and that's what we're doing. The 3rd floor, it can't, and the 2nd and 3rd floor are limited to how much you can use them because of the stability of the whole building. They were designed as bedrooms and ballrooms, not to house, tons of books and magazines and what have you. But anyway, but if the basement was fixed the way it should be, it would add a ton of space. The existing library does not have enough space for their records. They're overloaded in a little closet. They don't even know what they got probably in that little closet. They've just been throwing stuff in there because it's not organize, and they can't organize it, it's not enough room. That's another point I wanted to bring out, so, from the library standpoint. And the library board wonders what's the existing stuff that's in the Mitchell building that belongs to the library? Well, it all belongs to the library, right? I know you can't answer me.
Thank you, Richard. Any more public comment?
Well, I'm David McConnell, longtime resident of Hillsdale. Back in 1999, I was the chair of the library board at that time. And as I mentioned before the Community Development Board, the work that the Mitchell does is very similar to what you would find in some public libraries, like the Grand Rapids Public Library, for example. So here you have a situation where people are volunteering their time, doing it for free and paying some of the expense. And in some cities, all of this would be taken care of by public employees. And the city has a wonderful resource that really, yes, it's costing the city some money, but like somebody else said, well, the building has to be maintained anyway, to some extent. So whether it's a part of the library, I mean, it could be considered to be a part of the library, and that was the plan, as Mr. Smith mentioned. So I don't know, but I think the 5-year should allow some stuff to be done so that capital can be raised and hopefully get it somewhat taken care of. But this idea of it being kind of an orphan, it's shot off, that really the city has no responsibility for. I mean, they're doing the job that in some cities would be done by the city library. And it doesn't cost anything to do it, except we're arguing about upkeep of the building itself. So I hope something can come up. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Any more public comment?
Good evening, Russell Pysek, 150 State Street, Ward 1. We're going to change the topic here a little bit, bring you out to the nice weather. Let's go out to the lake, right? Got a nice boat launch there. Well, used to be nice. Earlier this year at a march, I went out there, test my new boat out. And when I got there, posts were all loose. One was missing. Very diligently, I spoke with Jason, Public Services. He got those repaired in a matter of a couple weeks. Great job, Jason, by the way. But under the water, where you actually pull your trailer in to launch or load your boat, it buckled up a few years ago because of the weather and the ice over the winter. Well, some of that concrete slabs, they're maybe 5 feet long, 4 feet long by 20 inches, all chain linked together. Some of them have buckled, so they just pulled them out. So now you got a big hole. It's happened to me. I've witnessed it to another fisherman backing in their boat trailer in there. One of the fenders is under the water. The other one is above the water, about 10 inches. That makes it a little more difficult. And because of that launch, that could be why some of the posts always get damaged, broken, and loosened, because the launch is in such disrepair. It'll make it a hazard. I also spoke with a friend who was out there the other day. Somebody was backing in a pontoon, probably live on a lake, and whoever was backing him up told him to stop, screaming and yelling at him, because he thought he was going to tip over the pontoon just because of the way the launch was. And it's worse right by the dock, where you usually want to kind of get close to the dock with your boat so you can maybe step off, tie it off, or get on it. Either case, that's the worst part. So now you have to be about 4 feet away from the dock to launch your boat somewhat safely, and you can't reach the dock. Not everybody goes into the water to launch their boat or load their boat. So I spoke with Michelle Lauren about this, and I spoke with Jason about the whole thing. Apparently they're in process now of getting some type of permit required. I know they make some precast concrete for boat launches. You can get probably in any size. Once you get it somewhat graded, you can just slide these in. Big, huge pieces of concrete, just like they have at Cub Lake. Cub Lake's launch is good. Their dock is a little under the weather, but their concrete boat launch itself is great. You can see the little round cups where they hook the chain on to lift up these, and those got to be 5 by 10 feet pieces of concrete reinforced, probably 4 inches thick minimum. But let's not overlook the beach area there. It brings a lot of people there, and I don't know if any of you on council have a boat or own a boat or launched a boat there. You should just go out there and watch it. Saturdays and Sundays, there's the busiest. I usually go during the week to fish, so nobody's out there, so I can take my time. But come to my attention and some of the other fishermen that I see out there complaining about it. Just want to make sure it gets looked into a little bit further and getting taken care of before somebody gets hurt. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Russell. Any more public comment? Okay, we will close the podium. Move into the city manager's report. Dave.
Mayor, I don't have anything for this evening, so we can move to council comment.
Council comment. Anybody have anything? Rob?
Thank you, Mayor. I just want to say I appreciate the Friends of the Mitchell being willing to do the work. I've heard promises for years that they'd be able to raise money, and I've seen nothing. So I would appreciate fulfilling the promises. This is something that really frustrates me here on council. Our community wants us to fix everything, but they are hesitant to open their own pocketbooks to do so. And so I would encourage our community that wants the Mitchell so ardently, which I do too, I appreciate what it provides and offers our community. The city budget, unfortunately, is unable to adequately care for the building at this time. So it is with the strongest encouragement to ask those of you who do desire to see the Mitchell to open your pocketbooks and help out in the effort. As far as the power is concerned, our political adversary, China, is building coal power plants by the score. India is building coal power plants by the score. Why? Because the technology is there for them to produce, they burn so hot that they eat their own pollution. They burn clean. We had a natural gas plant that our governor closed 5 years ago, whatever it was, that the mayor pointed out earlier, that was hundreds of jobs, provided us electricity for our BPU, and we just sit here idly and say, well, I guess that's the way it is, and what happens? Well, now we have bigger green energy mandates. Why? Because we didn't say no. There was no reason to shut that gas-powered plant down. They could have upgraded the equipment inside, and we could still have a legitimate power plant right here in our own county, which we don't anymore. And so this is why I voted no. I want to send a message, because if we don't send a message, then they're going to keep going. And my sister, who is here, lives in California. They have a green mandate there. Her energy costs have skyrocketed and gone through the roof, 400% in some cases. I don't want to see that here in Hillsdale, but that's what's going to happen if we have to do, because even as City Manager Mackey said, he can't guarantee that we're going to get a $69 price for quote-unquote clean energy, which it's not. Solar panels are toxic. They can't be recycled. They go in the ground and they're toxic. The windmills are toxic. They can't be recycled. They go in the ground and they're a toxic mess. It's a sham, and it's frustrating that we're just as a people saying, well, oh my gosh, it's what it is, and that frustrates me, and that's why I voted no, and I might continue to vote no in the future. I don't know yet. But if you remember last council meeting, I was going to vote yes. I'm glad we kicked it down the road because I got to think about it for a few minutes. And then Jason, to just completely switch gears, could you let us know how much it would cost to fix that concrete in the docks, please? Next meeting.
Yeah, next meeting, Jason. Anybody else got anything? Councilman Sharp?
I've lived in Hillsdale all my life. The Mitchell building has always been the library and will always be the library to me. regardless of the building, it used to be the Beck's building, Beck Chevrolet. It's always been and always will be the library. It has history there. I've been there. I was there when Governor Snyder came down to talk to us. I met him there, the second floor. I've never been up to the third floor where the ballroom is, but I know the history of the Mitchell building, and I want to see it be part of the library if it's possible. And that's what I would like to see happen. And that's my opinion.
Thank you, Bruce. Anybody else have anything?
Well, I would just like to say I'm really pleased that we are concerned about keeping these contributing buildings to the National Historic District. And I was pleased with the fact that we can now do that with a longer term lease.
Councilman Stuchel?
And with that, I talked to Nick this week, and the Kiefer's still coming along. Their the walls are going up. They've got plumbing's going in pretty quick, and they're talking late August, early September, possibly.
He told me today they were still on track to fulfill their ETA.
Yeah.
That they're framing in rooms right now.
Yep,
Yep. Real quick, dial-a-ride pricing is almost doubling. Is that correct? I remember we talked about it in the budget. We don't have to get into it right now, but I talked to some of the charter school people today, and they're really concerned about the cost having it become cost prohibitive to get their kids to school on dial-a-ride. Now, when I first got on council, it was a big priority to support the charter schools, and the charter schools, the private schools, the academy, the classical school, and I think it still should be, because I think that, they don't have transportation, and that is something that absolutely draws young families to this community. I talk to people all the time that moved here for the primary schools. So I'm hoping maybe before school starts up, maybe, is it Public Services or that oversees dial-a-ride can meet and maybe talk about if we're raising prices on dial-a-ride, specifically looking at student pricing differently. So that's all I have.
Has something come before us, or it's just oh, okay. Are there currently group rates?
It was.
It's in the budget.
It was in the budget, and it was specifically delineated.
I remember that, yeah.
So it has been increased, but it hasn't gone into effect yet.
Is there a distinction between a solo ride, if someone calls for a ride, versus a scheduled pickup rate?
Yes, there are. And Jason would know that information.
Well, thanks.
So all dial-a-ride and pickup is door-to-door service. Most everything is they call, we come. That's the way our funding is from the state. We're not a dedicated route by any means by the day. So everything is truly by the call-in. Of course, you can call in for today for DUF tomorrow, but the whole the raise for one of the charter schools, the Will Carlton, they've traditionally paid out-of-town rates since dial-a-ride. All I can say is since I've been here. I use that analogy all the time, so I apologize. But traditionally, they are out of town, and they are the hardest to get to, because even to get to that school out of town, they have to go the farthest away to Bacon, Lake Pleasant, and all the way around to get those schools. Can I get under that bridge? No. So that was the only school that was affected by the rate increase. So they had to pay out-of-town rates plus the 50 cents. Everyone else was a flat 50 cents across the board.
Okay, can we talk about this sometime soon?
We can talk about it, but the state took away 37,000.
I know, I understand.
Yep.
I understand. I just want to have a conversation about it. So I remembered the reason for the increase in dial-a-ride, so.
Can I add one thing to that, Mayor, if I may?
Yes, sir.
So the increase that we proposed with the ridership we had last year, we're still only recouping about $13,837 with the 50 cent with the ridership we had in 2023. So that we're trying to get that funding from other ways, from advertisements on the buses and so forth. So that's still just a drop in the bucket to get back our 37,000. So,
okay.
Thank you.
Yes, sir. Motion on the floor from Councilman Sharp, seconded by Councilman Soha and Stuchel. All in favor? Any opposed? The ayes have it.
This meeting's adjourned.